tonight.
I'm Jane. I'm kind of new to most of you, so it's nice to meet you guys. I'm the creative director for Mad Ag, and yeah, I'm excited to talk a little bit about our grain trials we have going on this season and a little bit about our soil health stuff that we have going on.
My name's Lindsay, they, them, from Boulder Food Rescue. I'm our program director.
I can introduce myself. I'm Molly. I'm a campus organizer for MassPerg in Massachusetts, but I've also been farming at a local organic vegetable farm for the last 4 seasons.
I'm Peter, also an organizer with Environment Colorado. I'm working with Maddie and Katie to put this on. He's he, him pronouns.
And yeah, I'm Maddie, she, hers. I'm also an organizer with Environment Colorado, working with Katie and Peter.
I texted Wendy. She did not get back to me.
All right. Katie, should we start letting people in?
Yeah, I guess. I just sent a quick email to Wendy too, so hopefully she will get it to me. And come on quick in a little bit. But yeah, I guess we should start a minute.
Cool. Maddie, are you recording? Oh, here's Wendy.
I'll send her a shout real quick. Hey, Wendy.
Hey, I'm so sorry.
No, you're all good.
It's a long story. I was entering separately computer via phone, and like one was let in and the other was not let in, and
Oh, okay,
I
yeah.
had to try like 3 different times. Trust me, I've been on Zoom straight, and I'm not exaggerating, straight since 8:30 this morning without a single break. So I do know Zoom. I don't know what was going on there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're all good. You're all good. So we just like did intros really quick, but we're just asking, I'll make you a co-host right now, but we are just asking people to put their name, then their pronouns and organization that they work at. So you can just edit your name.
Cool. And then I am going to let our folks in.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm not sure if you can all hear me yet, but welcome to our event, Eco Eats, virtual cooking tutorial and speaking panel. So we're really excited to have all you guys here tonight. And I guess I'll just introduce myself. My name is Katie Richards. I'm an organizer with Environment Colorado. We're a statewide environmental nonprofit working to protect clean air, clean water, open spaces, and fight climate change. And tonight we'll be focusing on the impacts that our food systems have on climate change and the important role local and sustainable agriculture plays in that. And we'll also have the chance to talk about some of the inequities surrounding access to local and healthy foods. So this event is part of our larger campaign, our Climate Defenders campaign, which is focused on building a grassroots network of activists who are passionate about making Colorado a leader in the fight against climate change and keeping our elected officials accountable in that. So at the end, we'll have a chance to do a quick action to Senators Gardner and Bennett and make sure they know that Coloradans are asking for bold action on climate change. So tonight we'll be kicking off our event with our speaker panel. And I'd love to introduce all our speakers to you guys. So first we will hear from Molly Callahan from Massperg students and Barrett's Mill Farm in Concord, Massachusetts. We will also be hearing from Jane Cavagnaro with Mad Agriculture, Wendy Peters Machete at Livewell, Colorado, and Lindsay Loberg from Boulder Food Rescue. So after we hear from our speakers, we'll have a short segment dedicated to Q&A where so just be listening, and if you think of anything that you want to ask them, be sure to jot it down, and I'll be fielding those questions to them. And after that, we'll have a quick intro video to Growing Gardens in Boulder from Carly Silberman, who unfortunately can't be here with us tonight. She might pop in for a little bit, but they did provide us with a pre-recorded cooking tutorial that we're gonna watch. And then we'll finally have that action to push Senators Gardner and Bennett to support more ambitious climate policies. So thanks again, everyone. Let me introduce Molly Callahan. She is a campus organizer with Massperg students and works at a local organic farm, Barrett's Mill Farm in Concord, Massachusetts.
Awesome, thank you, and thanks for having me today. I'm very excited to be invited into this event. If you couldn't tell, I'm wearing my pea-pod earrings in honor of local ag. So yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Molly again. So I started working for Massperg back in March as a campus organizer, working with students at a bunch of different universities in Massachusetts. But in addition to that, I've been working, like Katie said, at Barrett's Mill Farm, which is a small local organic vegetable farm in my hometown of Concord. So I would love to just take a couple minutes to talk about, like you guys are talking about, the connection between agriculture and climate change, and also, into the other big social issues that we're focusing on today. in this crazy modern world that we're living in. But thinking specifically about, agriculture and climate change, I think I break down this connection into two pretty broad categories. The first is really the more tangible, measurable impact that agriculture has on the planet around us. That could be carbon footprint that comes from the actual, producing the food. It could be transportation for the food, water footprint, degradation to the soil. There's so many, like a myriad of issues that, or impacts that agriculture has. And then the second, I guess, connection is a little bit more elusive, but I think of it as the connection between agriculture and people and food and how all of that kind of interconnects. Food is really, of course, central to who we are. Beyond just our health, of course, it affects our own bodies, what we put into it. But our culture is based on it. I mean, it's literally in the word agriculture. And our relationships with people are, of course, focused a lot on food. Think about how many times during pandemic you've said, like, man, I wish I could go out with my friends and go get a meal or whatever it is. Like, clearly it is all central to who we are as people. So we have to, of course, address that connection when it comes to talking about agriculture and climate change. And I'm guessing you all, recognize the value of food and the connection it has to us because you're here. But, what's really troubling in our modern food system is the breakdown of the system, really. The fact that we can't easily track the process of the food getting from the field to our bellies. And one of the really fantastic ways that we can actually combat that is switching more to a local agricultural setting. And there's a lot of value in local agriculture. And I'm honestly only probably gonna name a couple. There's so much more. But one of the first things I think of is just the fact that smaller systems are less likely to break down completely when they're put under some sort of stress. If you think about, contaminated greens from California being shipped all over the country, it's going to have a huge negative impact, bigger than one of, a small local farm. For example, from Barrett's Mill Farm, last year, it wasn't an issue of contamination, but a neighboring farm had their kale crop completely fail. And, people love their kale. We needed to figure out a way to make sure they got their kale. Luckily, our crop was doing wonderfully that year. So we were able to work out a system where their shareholders had some of our crop. And that's like a pretty small, example, but it's a really good, clear indication that smaller food systems are able to take on stressors more easily and more easily recover from them. Unlike, a big industrialized food setting. So that's one thing that I definitely think is worth highlighting in local agriculture. In addition, we always have to talk about, economics. There's more money in agriculture that goes directly into your local community. And certainly, sustainability has to take into account economics when thinking about, the future. In addition, it also just makes the industry more visible. There's often a lot of social issues associated with industrialized farms, for example, workers being taken advantage of, being underpaid, not being paid at all. There's really a lot of big issues associated with it. And certainly making agriculture more localized can at least bring some of those issues to light. There's a whole other set of issues of people not having access, which I believe one of our other panelists is going to speak more on. So there's, of course, other social issues that have to be addressed when talking about local food. But at least that would be a step in the right direction, I believe. And then the last thing, I guess, that I really wanted to touch on is bridging the gap between people and food. And just having people, gain a better understanding about what they're actually putting into their bodies and the impact that it has on the world around them. Our lives are so busy. It's often hard to actually take the time to pay attention to where your food is coming from and its impact on, like I said, both yourself and the world around you, especially when the system is so hard to understand and complex and full of all of these weird steps and ingredients that we don't actually understand. So by actually bringing it more locally, you bring that food closer to people and make it easier to understand. And people will be more invested in, you know, more local food, both literally and figuratively. It makes it more understandable, more visible, and it also brings you closer to, you know, the factors that surround agriculture and the climate. One example I have from literally a couple weeks ago, here in Massachusetts, we haven't been getting a whole lot of rain the last few weeks. It's been kind of hot and dry. And our strawberry crop started off fantastic, and then we didn't get rain for 2 weeks and it just totally crashed. And I was having a conversation with one of our shareholders who was like, yeah, so what happened with the strawberries? And we said, well, you know, hasn't really rained much. And she kind of took a pause and said, oh yeah, I guess it hasn't really. Like, I hadn't really thought about that much. Which I think just goes to show, I mean, of course, like that's a really microcosm example, but it goes to show that, you know, even if you're living in a climate, you don't necessarily recognize some of the stressors that are happening all around you. And that's one of the, I think, most amazing things that local agriculture can do, is it can bring you closer to the environment, even if you can't, you know, be out hiking a mountain or out sailing on the ocean, whatever it is. It's still another way for us to actually connect back with the environment and recognize the stressors that it's under as well, and be able to understand those better. And I mean, in the end, there's always going to be people like all of us on this call who really are going to care about food and agriculture no matter what. But we need to find ways to make the rest of the population recognize its importance, and the role we all play in this food system. And one of the ways that I definitely think is going to be key in that fight is definitely bringing people closer to the food they eat. So eating locally, whether that's, you know, a local share at your vegetable farm, or, you know, buying local bread at a bakery down the street, whatever it is, getting people to have more of a personal relationship with the people who grow their food, with food itself, with the environment around them. That's one of the ways that we can really, I think, start to address the many issues in our food industry. So I think I'll probably wrap up there. I don't want to take up too much time, but thank you all.
Yeah, thanks, Molly. I think that overview is like really helpful to kind of put into context all the different things that we're going to hear about tonight. And it's also, you know, it fits well into like talking about these things in Colorado as well. I know you're based out of Massachusetts, but I think that it kind of gives a good stepping stone for that. Cool. So next we're going to hear from Jane Cavagnaro, and she's going to talk about some related work that her organization, Mad Agriculture, has been doing. And she is the creative director at Mad Agriculture, which is based out of Boulder. So yeah, awesome.
Hi. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I just have a couple of slides I'm going to use to accompany some of the things I'm talking about. And again, I would echo what you said, Katie. That was a great overview in thinking about local food. And I think that really sets the stage well for what I'm going to get into. I'm just going to kind of focus a little bit on Mad Agriculture and tell you guys a bit about what we do and a couple of the programs that we're working on that relate to more of the local food shed that we're talking about. I also wanted to thank you guys for hosting this event. Thank you, Environment Colorado, and for inviting me to join in on this conversation. I really appreciate it. So Mad Agriculture is a nonprofit, and we're based here in Boulder, Colorado, with a mission to reimagine and restore a relationship to Earth through agriculture. And we often say we're working from head to heart, poetry to science, financing to markets, and soil to shelf to catalyze a regenerative revolution in agriculture. We're really trying to live in this radical center, and we're trying to help farmers thrive economically and ecologically. So as we know, agriculture and climate change, they're deeply related. Molly really touched on this well. And because of our management of most of our lands, at least 50% of the carbon in the Earth's soil has been released into the atmosphere through agriculture. And so Mad Ag really sees the challenges in our current food system stemming from not only the continuation of like this industrialized system, but from the disconnect to our food sources, the disconnect to rural communities, and a polarization that really makes it incredibly difficult to begin a healing process. So our system of change at MadAg is really focused on farm planning. And so we create farm plans that reflect the vision a farmer has for their land and for their future while also like contextualizing it with their environment and the resources that they have and the resources on their land. So we use this information to activate the plans, and we do that through accessing new capital, new markets, and connecting farmers to a culture of change. And so the farm plan is never really meant to be a stagnant thing. It is really a tool in creating a more regenerative system. So as we work with a farm to find financial support for a new project and premium markets for new crops, the farm plan really serves as our guide. So we work with farms throughout Colorado, but we also are going to have some new partners throughout the Midwest come this fall. So there are two pieces of what we do that I wanted to briefly mention today, and that is our focus on soil health and also our regional grain trials we have going on this year. So as we plan for a more regenerative system on a farm, we tend to focus on improving soil health. That's kind of at the center of our plans often. Soil is an ecosystem, and it can be managed to provide for plant nutrients. It can absorb and hold rainwater to use during drier periods. It can filter pollutants from leaving the field. It really serves as this firm foundation for agricultural activities, and it provides habitat for soil microbes to flourish and diversify. So for us, focusing on soil health can really be the catalyst for increasing carbon sequestration, improving the water cycle, building soil fertility, and increasing biodiversity and overall resilience of a system. So all of this is really important in the big picture work towards reducing and reversing the impacts of climate change. Improved soil health can be achieved through a lot of different management practices that we work on with farmers, but a couple of big ones that I'll touch on are cover crops, compost application, planned grazing, perennial plantings, windbreaks, and the reduced and eliminated use of tilling. All of these are really critical to kind of reducing that carbon and moving us towards, reverse climate change. So I also want to take a moment to note that at MadAg, we tend to use a place-based model, place-based thinking, meaning we really believe in like the localized, contextualized solutions that need to be found for each farmer, each community, and each facet of the food system. So rather than focusing at large on climate change, we kind of believe that there's a lot of positive externalities that come with focusing on a specific place or a specific piece of land. So with that said, we have a number of trials happening locally that have really informed our work here in Boulder County and the Front Range. We started our grain trials back in 2019 with a goal to start regionalizing the supply chain and educate ourselves on different grain varieties and the potential successes we could see here along the Front Range. So heritage and ancient grains are really starting to see a revival across the country. They have unique flavors. They're more interesting for baking. There are a lot of properties that make them interesting for consumers and producers and everyone across the supply chain. And it's really a movement that requires a really strong community support system, and we've really found that here in Boulder. We've worked with groups like the Colorado Grain Chain, Black Cat Farm, Mossel Seed Foundation. So many groups are really excited about this work, and in order to move a supply chain to a more localized system, it really takes a lot of people pushing on it, and so it's exciting to have that energy here. So last year in 2019, we planted 19 varieties, but this year we kind of pared it back. We're planting 7 different varieties, and we're trying to test it on larger landscapes, so on more acres. And this year we're collaborating with 6 different farmers and have assisted in seed selection, crop management, and market logistics and data collection. All of that varies depending on what each specific farmer was needing. So by the end of the season, we're really hoping to have a second test bake so we can kind of actually see what the flavor is like, and get data across planting, growing, harvesting, and kind of inform our plan for the 2021 season. So those are a couple of the focuses we have going on locally, and I'll leave it there for now, and I'm happy to take any questions about our local work. So I'll hand it back. Thanks.
Thanks, Jane. Yeah, we're gonna have like a little bit of time for questions. So if anyone has any questions that they thought of while listening to that, just there'll be a function where you can message me any questions that you have, and I can read them to you, Jane. But yeah, that's really interesting to hear about the Grain Revival Program and kind of the more specific like soil health work that you guys are doing. I think it's super important. So next up, we're going to hear from Wendy Peters-Machete. Wendy is the Director of Food Systems at Live Well, Colorado. And she'll be speaking about her experience working in urban gardens and the work that Live Well does in the local food space, and also like how kind of getting into that equity piece that we talked about earlier. So yeah, Wendy, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. And I should have corrected one thing. We do not currently work in the urban garden space at all. I personally have a background in that, so I'm happy to address any questions. But the work I'm going to talk about today is more of our statewide work as Live Well, Colorado. So hi, everybody. Good evening. Thanks for inviting me and having me here tonight, or evening, whatever time it is. Yeah, my name is Wendy Peters-Machete. I guess my official title is Director of Strategic Initiatives at Live Well, Colorado. We are a statewide nonprofit. I wish I could ask for like hands, but I can't really when I do this, of like, who's ever even heard of us? But I will kind of do my spiel and background about who we are regardless, whether you've heard of us or not. And sort of my big caveat to this right now is whether you've heard of us or not, it is a very funny, sort of awkward moment to be talking about our organization and our work. Because we are in the middle of a 100% rebrand. So in a month, we will be relaunching with a new name, logo, mission, vision, website, everything. So it is not public, but we will be called Nourish Colorado. Our tagline is Transforming Food Systems. So speaking today as Live Well, Colorado, the work that we are currently doing that I will speak to is the work that we will continue to do. A bit of history about Live Well, Colorado. It was founded about 12 years ago, really as sort of this collaborative of foundations and the state public health department to come together to really curb the rising rates of overweight and obesity across the state. That is not the core of what we do or who we are anymore. We did deep, deep community investment and partner work with community-based coalitions across the state for many, many years, and we no longer do that as well. So we have focused more in the past couple of years more deeply on our food systems work. Live Well that used to be did a lot of active living, space in the active living realm as well, and we do not do that anymore. So as a 100% food systems focused organization, part of our rebrand coming is really just sort of being clear about who we are and what we do, and that we really strictly work within the food system. So we are a statewide nonprofit. We are based out of Denver, but truly work with partners in every corner of the state. We may not be our currently sort of public mission, but we're dedicated to developing sustainable local and regional food systems that ensure equitable access to nutritious foods for all Coloradans. So that's sort of the core of who we are and what we do. We like to think of ourselves, and increasingly are, working at sort of systems level change work. The work that we do, that I'll mention a little bit more in a minute here, we really like to think of as sort of multiple win, like multiple benefit, multiple win types of strategies that we do. And we do our work through partnerships with local groups, local food coalitions across the state. We do our work through statewide initiatives, which I'll mention in a minute. And we do work increasingly at the state and federal policy level. So we work a lot with proactively at the legislative level, both state and federally. So I guess what do I mean by sort of this is our focus is like sustainable local and regional food systems that ensure equitable access to nutritious foods. So this is kind of what I mean about the multiple win, multiple benefit area focus, is that our work is really trying to leverage, channel, direct, pick your action verb here, resources that are at the table. So programs, federal dollars, state dollars, existing infrastructure. How do we kind of channel and direct the resources we have at our fingertips to drive more dollars into our local agricultural economies while increasing access to healthy foods for those who have faced many barriers to accessing healthy foods, right? So we're looking at how do we build programs and policy that have sort of multiple wins across the food system. So some examples of our work is we do a lot in healthy food incentives. So some of you may have heard of the Double Up Food Bucks program. It is a SNAP formerly food stamps. It is a SNAP incentive program. So if you are a SNAP participant and you shop at one of the participating grocery stores or markets or corner stores or farm stands that partner with us, you basically get a double of your dollaring and you get extra fruits and vegetables when you shop with your EBT or your SNAP card. We also do other produce incentives with the WIC program and the Older Adult Congregate Meal Program, and they're really all centered on increasing access to Colorado grown fruits and vegetables. So again, sort of looking at where are we channeling those dollars and how are we stretching individual food dollars from the food access perspective. We also do a lot of work in healthy food and institutions. We do a lot of work in local food procurement, primarily centered on the K-12 school district system, but expanding that a little bit. That work is led by our culinary specialists. So we have a team of chefs at our organization in our consulting suite here that work with school districts and other institutions really to shift their procurement practices first and foremost back to scratch, which we think is the fundamental change that is needed to allow for and encourage local procurement and more relationships with regional growers and food hubs. So based on sort of a culinary focused scratch cooking model, we then build in layers of training into the procurement work that we do that then builds in seasonality, relationship building with growers and with food hubs, and sort of helps shift that procurement towards more seasonality and regionality. So our primary programs are Double Up Food Bucks. It's really cute. It's called Low Pro Co. It's Local Procurement Colorado. That is our K-12 local procurement initiative. And then kind of under supporting, advancing, being informed by all of our programmatic work that we do is the state and federal advocacy work that we do. So, so all call as well. We are always looking to broaden sort of the people that we learn from and hear from when we do our legislative advocacy. There's all sorts of ways we can get involved with us. I clearly do not have a PowerPoint with all this, but please, Katie, share my contact information. There's many ways that we can get you dialed in with our legislative advocacy. At the state level, we will do advocacy that we have, successful advocacy that we have completed is around bringing more dollars to SNAP incentive programs like Double Up Food Bucks and bringing more dollars to schools, so increasing reimbursement rates for doing local procurement. So we sort of mirror our policy advocacy to the programs that we do, and the same at the federal level. So increasingly doing a lot of federal advocacy work, primarily centered in the Farm Bill, but we do branch out into other omnibus bills as well. I do also want to note that part of what our work and sort of what we think is being a partner in sort of rebalancing the food system, right, is right now we are deeply involved with the Colorado Farm and Food Systems Response Team. I just want to flag that if anyone is interested. We are project managers of that COVID response initiative. The Farm and Food System Response Team is it is a very loose coalition, but about 15 or so different organizations came together in late March to form this response team. And its focus is really on how do we, again, listen and learn and then direct resources to those growers and intermediaries such as food hubs that are probably, one, greatly impacted by COVID, so loss of markets or loss of sales and projected loss of sales because they were in direct markets. They were selling to schools, they were selling to restaurants, they were selling at farmers markets that have been greatly affected, et cetera. So those on the grower side have been probably greatly affected by COVID, but also are woefully underserved by current USDA programs that maybe are not served by current commodity markets, and also represent growers and intermediaries that traditionally have been, but sorry, there's a very loud siren in the back. But growers and intermediaries that have been historically and currently and very intentionally marginalized and left out of USDA program. So with a direct look at how are we directing resources to BIPOC farmers, female farmers, direct market farmers, small and medium-sized farmers, as we go through and direct our resources. So I did want to flag that very COVID responsive initiative that we are involved with. And again, I'm very happy to talk more about that. We do have statewide calls. They're open to anybody every Thursday at 11 a.m. So I'm happy to share information about that. And then I think in terms of, there's a lot I could say around equity. That direction could go many, many different conversations. Our focus at LiveWell is, I think, that sort of the rebalance in the food systems piece. And I want to be really, really clear about who we are and our intentions is that we do not actually refer to ourselves as a food justice organization. We don't feel like we have attained that. Currently, when you look at sort of conventional leadership roles and certainly pay, we are still right now a white-led organization, even though we have BIPOC staff. And being very cognizant of that, we are working towards being an anti-racist organization. We realize that we are not a racial justice organization. We are not there yet by any stretch of the imagination. But as we work to really be an anti-racist organization, what we are committed to as an organization is across all of our programs and our policy work is deepening our partnerships, deepening our listening, and always sort of paying attention to who has been very systematically, and very intentionally left out of resources. And then how do we use the platform that we have to bring some rebalance back to this food system? And I think there's all sorts of data points that we could talk about. We grow more than enough food. It's like 3,700 calories a day is what we produce across North America. And yet, like 1 out of 11 Americans struggle every day with like not knowing if they can feed themselves or their family. And currently right now, those rates are much, much higher because of COVID and everything that's come after it. So we are trying to look at how do we actually use the resources we have to say, wait, we have enough at our disposal. Resources are being allocated. We actually have a very efficient food system by many, many metrics. We have a very efficient food system and a very safe food system, but it doesn't do a good job of being equitable, right? It doesn't distribute resources equitably across many different identities and many different populations. So how that we can take the SNAP programs, take your school meal programs that bring literally together, food assistance programs bring almost $1 billion federal dollars into the state of Colorado every year to be spent on food. So how do we look at these systems, this infrastructure, and say, how can we shift that a little bit? How can we kind of change where those dollars are going, right? How can we change, how people can stretch those dollars to have access to what we think are high quality, fresh, perishable, local foods, and actually channel some of those dollars more into our local and regional food systems. So that is probably more than enough than what you've heard from me. And Katie, please, I can chat it in as well, but please share my contact information widely. I'm happy to follow up about any of this. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. We will definitely share all of the social information and your contact information in our follow-up email at the end of the meeting. So cool. Next, we are going to hear from Lindsay Loberg from Boulder Food Rescue. They are a program director working to promote food justice and less waste in our food system. And they are going to talk specifically about the inequities that play out in our food system with regards to personal choice, particularly when it comes to local and sustainably grown food. So similar to Wendy, but kind of more into that space. So, Lindsay.
Thanks, Katie. I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. Great. So yeah, Katie, thank you for that introduction, and thanks for having me, and thanks for having all of us. Glad to follow Wendy. I feel like I can kind of, some of what I said ties very nicely into what she was talking about. So I'm going to focus mostly today on the two food systems, in a sense, that we have inside of our larger system. So one system I think that most of us will recognize is the choice system. And inside of the choice system, we can have, well, like as in the name, a lot of choice in the foods that we eat, which encompasses locally sourced food. We can go to the grocery store, we can get a CSA, and we can't get exactly whatever we want whenever we want it, maybe now particularly during COVID, but we have, like Wendy mentioned, a pretty efficient food system that gets us within the choice system a large amount of choice. We walk into the produce section of a grocery store, and it looks like this beautiful assortment of abundance and variety and more food, literally than anyone could ever eat. Anyone who is shopping at that grocery store could ever eat. Conversely, the charitable system is marked by a drastic reduction in choice and control and power. So inside of the charitable system, there is not a lot of choice around where your food comes from, the particular food items you get, or when you can access those food items. So, you know, many of us are used to, if we want a particular item, we can go to the grocery store whenever we want. If we want to access like a farmer's market, farm stand, those have more specific hours, and we might be familiar with that if we're not used to using the charitable system. The charitable system has very specific hours, many of which do not work for people who say work. And additionally, when you're using the charitable system, you might be using some of the programs that Wendy mentioned, like SNAP, that do have an element of choice that is really helpful for people. And at the same time, those supplemental programs are exactly supplemental and run out, the funds run out before they're replenished. At the same time, when you're using the charitable system, resources like a food pantry or a food bank, oftentimes your choices may not be trusted to be healthy, good for you, or in line with the specific restrictions of that food bank, food pantry. So an experience a lot of people have that they can find frustrating is to, even once they've accessed these agencies that can sometimes be difficult to access, is even have that element of choice removed when choices within the food pantry, food bank are already limited to begin with by being guided towards particular items that maybe a volunteer or staff at that food pantry imagine to be healthy. So again, reduction in choice, power, control. Boulder Food Rescue, we are working within the charitable system in a sense. Our central program is a food distribution program where we deliver surplus food from grocery stores, farmers markets, and now for the first time during COVID-19 from farmers and local producers to communities. So we're working within this charitable system and also kind of trying to turn this charitable system onto its head, specifically with the goal of offering people more choice, more power, and control in the systems of food that they use. So going back to these two food systems, you know, while you hear me talking, you think like, oh, you know, Wendy mentioned that our food system is efficient, and you know, like, wow, it is. Like we can feed a ton of people. However, another thing that Wendy is saying is true. There are two separate systems, right? And in the choice system, users of the choice system are privileged, and for paramount choice, for easy access, for more nutrition than anybody really needs or can consume, and that's why there's waste built into the system. And then there's the separate choice system where people are, I'm going to go back to another thing Wendy said, very intentionally left out. So our food system, larger food system, efficient, yes. 2 food systems, efficient, no. And then another thing you're likely thinking of when you listen is that doesn't seem fair. And that's specifically true. And because we can predict who will use the charitable system and who will use the choice system according to class and race, it's specifically not just. And we often talk about the food system as if it's broken. And I'm putting a quote up from Karen Washington, who challenges that. And she's getting at the exact same thing that I just quoted Wendy to say, that the system isn't broken. It's working exactly the way that it's designed to. And people are very, very intentionally left out, and this is one system in a larger system of resource and power consolidation. So another thing Wendy said, we need systems level change. So what does a better food system look like? And now I'm going outside of the work that we do at Boulder Food Rescue. I think for the purpose of broadening our imaginations and what this might look like. So inside of a more just food system, perhaps land and resources on which to grow food gets returned to people who those land and resources were taken from at some point in history. So perhaps some form of reparation. And then I think no matter what a more just food system looks like, we really have to be concerned with returning power and control to people who should hold power and control over their own access to food, right? So I'm going to, this is the responsibility of all of us, right? Us as individuals, us as nonprofit agency people, us as policy people, institutions, and our governments. It's the responsibility of all of us, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do at Boulder Food Rescue, just pretty briefly. I mentioned before food distribution directly to communities. So we call these no-cost grocery programs. We partner with people living in their own communities to receive food that Boulder Food Rescue procures and delivers. And these community spaces, they end up being places for people to shop. Food items that can be pretty limited at pantries, so kind of like another supplemental resource, right? Like this is often, these images here are what deliveries sometimes look like. So a lot of fruits and vegetables, not entirely locally sourced, but importantly supplemental, and even more importantly, communities run the programs themselves. So what the programs look like, who can use them, when they're available, how the food is laid out, when the deliveries come. This is all up to the community and coordinated with Boulder Food Rescue and facilitated with Boulder Food Rescue. And I think for me, it's just been really interesting to see what's possible when we simply provide a resource itself and leave the choice and the control up to people. So these community spaces aren't just a place for people to access food. They become, not so much right now, unfortunately, when we can't gather together, right? But they become gathering places. People arrange childcare. People arrange ride shares to the grocery store or to other services. Yeah, I mean, people become connected and the communities become richer places over food, which of course they do. So many spaces are like that. Some more, even more interesting things that we sometimes deliver, where we don't really shine as an element of choice. Sometimes we deliver these weird vegetables that nobody really knows how to use. So people share recipes. We worked with participants to source a recipe book created by them and for other people in their community, for example. And yeah, I think, today I would challenge us when we're thinking about choice, when we're thinking about local food, what are the ways, broad picture, that we can leverage our own resources, that we can leverage our own power, that we can leverage our own privilege to basically transfer power and control back to people who should hold it in the first place. So I think I think there are some tangible and less tangible ways to accomplish this, to transfer power and control back to people. I'm going to offer you a few that are like pretty simple, tangible things that you could do today. And then I'm going to get kind of more like abstract life's work kind of stuff. So yeah, I've talked to you a little bit about the work of Boulder Food Rescue that aims to allow people more choice and control in their own food system. We particularly right now need support. So we always need volunteers. So you can go to our website, boulderfoodrescue.org, sign up to volunteer. You can donate. You can do that also at boulderfoodrescue.org. And we have a sub-program called Fresh Food Connect that might be of interest to you if you're a grower. So that is freshfoodconnect.org. Basically, backyard gardeners donate produce to the same program that I showed you some images of earlier. So go to freshfoodconnect.org. You can download the app and become a donor yourself. I think if you zoom back and get more like broader life's work, what can you do to allow people more of this power, choice, control? I think you're getting into a lot of the things that Wendy was talking about. How can we use our electoral system and our legislative system to support programs like SNAP, like Double Up Food Bucks that Wendy mentioned, to allow people more choice, right? Like basically those programs that allow people purchasing power to choose their own food and to choose their own food locally, like in the case of Double Up Food Bucks, or Fruit and Veg is another program that at least allows people to purchase fruits and vegetables, some of those being local ones. How can we make those programs more widely available for people? How do we increase the amounts that are available to people? How do we decrease the barriers for people to access those programs? And how do we make sure that those programs are equitably available to people? Specifically, there are a number of initiatives right now that make those programs inaccessible, functionally inaccessible to people based on immigration status. So I encourage you there also to, I think, follow the contact information that Wendy provided you, so you can educate yourself on what these programs are, how they present themselves in our legislative and electoral systems, and then vote and advocate for people to have more choice, power, and control. That's it for me, and I'll be here for the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we kind of got a good overview of sustainable agriculture and all of the different ways that that's very intersectional. You know, not just with climate change, but there's a lot of things that come into the like our food systems and you know, how we source our food, like eating is such an important thing. So, you know, there's a lot that goes into that. And I think it's like awesome to hear from so many different perspectives. So I just want to thank you guys again. And now we will jump into the Q&A. So if anybody has any questions for our speakers, you can use the chat function and you can message me any of those, and I will kind of be the MC for that. So yeah, we only have like probably like a couple minutes, like 1 or 2 questions. So if anybody has anything they would like to. Okay, so Jane, somebody would like to hear about like the carbon sinks part of MADAG and the NORI program that you guys have or partner with.
So the carbon piece of it is just kind of one way that we're able to bring more money onto a landscape. So that's kind of under the general bucket of ecosystem services. And so Nori is a startup based out of Seattle, and they have worked with us over the past 2 years to develop a way to create carbon credits specifically for agricultural landscapes. And so it's possible for our partnering farms to work with Nori to get paid to be sequestering carbon. And so there's a set rate, and as they continue to use certain practices and they're able to verify these practices, they're able to get a supplemental income on top of everything else they're doing. So this is kind of just one tool in a lot that we are trying to use to bring a diversified financial profile into how we're getting money into new projects.
Awesome. Cool. So we are running a little late because we started late. So if anyone has any questions, we will be sending out everyone's information in the follow-up email. So yeah, feel free to reach out to people individually after the event. So we are going to play the intro video that Carly sent us from Growing Gardens. So Maddie is going to do that. Maddie or Peter? A little technical difficulties.
I'm sorry, y'all. My Wi-Fi is cutting in and out, so I think Peter's gonna share it, if that's okay.
Yeah, so while we're waiting, oh no, we got it.
Yeah, so I'll let Carly pre-recorded this video for us, and then Katie and Maddie will show us the awesome flatbreads that Carly is describing.
Hi, I'm Chef Carly with Growing Gardens. We're very excited to be a part of Environment Colorado's programming and excited to share some of the local options with you here in Boulder. What we're doing this summer looks a little different than other summers, but we're very proud to be bringing our farm stand open to the public on Wednesdays, as you can see here, from 4 to 6:30. If you enjoy the cooking portion that we'll be sharing with you next in this program and would like to learn more of that, we have online courses with gardening, honeybees, and cooking. We also have a wonderful virtual summer camp program, 9 weeks of summer camp that include different themes children's cooking camps. They'll also involve our goats and our honeybees and art and photography on the farm. So some wonderful options to get everyone reconnected to the earth and connected to local food for this summer. Enjoy!
Awesome. So I can show my flatbread that I made. Carly sent us a video that unfortunately I don't think we're gonna have time to play it tonight, but we will send it out. So basically it's a Mediterranean soca flatbread. And I have mine right here, which I don't know if you guys can see it. I don't want it to fall off the plate, but I made 2 of them and I ate one for lunch and they were very good. Also, they have different options for kind of like toppings that you can put on and like recommendations with kind of local and in-season produce. But it was awesome because the recipe was already vegan, which I'm vegan, so it was awesome that that was available. And, you know, they thought of that.
Yeah, and I think I'm back enough with strong Wi-Fi here. I will try to screen share a photo. My grandma and I made one together, and oh gosh, it's not letting me screen share the right screen. There we are. So it was delicious. We thoroughly enjoyed it. It was like so much fun. We have the pesto on there and then like all the fresh vegetables that we had. And it was the basil from my grandmother's garden and she was like super pumped about it. So definitely would recommend if y'all have time after this or at some point. It's a super simple and fun recipe and great for summer. So thank you for Carly.
Okay, awesome. So, like I said, we can't really show the video right now, but we will be sending it out immediately after this. I guess we are just going to close off with an action. So now that we've learned talking about systems changes that need to go on, I think it is important to note that climate change is a large global issue, and that the only way we are going to enact lasting change is if we work with our elected officials to take action on the federal level. So the action item that we will be doing tonight is asking everyone to call Senator Bennett and Gardner, which Len will talk about.
Yeah. So hi, everybody. Ellen Montgomery, Field Director with Environment Colorado. So this is tangentially related to food, but it's been a pretty exciting week from the climate perspective in Congress. So I want to give a quick update. So today, the House of Representatives passed the Moving Forward Act, which is a huge infrastructure bill that includes a lot of great environmental measures, including a lot on clean transportation, electric vehicles. But one of the big things that Environment Colorado has been pushing for is extending existing tax credits for investments in energy efficiency, solar, wind, energy storage, and electric vehicles. So these are the tax credits that allow folks who want to put solar panels on their home or their business, or to buy a clean car, or to invest in energy storage, to allow them to basically write that off on their taxes, so to make the financial investment a little bit more worthwhile. These are tax credits that have existed, that we've been pushing for extending because we think a lot of people have benefited from them, but a lot of people could be benefiting from them in the future. So the House passed that as part of this larger bill just a couple hours ago. The next step is that the Senate needs to act and vote on their version of the bill to extend the tax credits. And so we are asking everybody to screenshot or jot this down and give our senators, Senator Cory Gardner and Senator Michael Bennett, a call If you call them this evening, you'll likely get their voicemail. So you can just say this on their office voicemail. That's great. The staff will count the number of voicemails and phone calls that they get on any particular topic.
Okay. Well, yes, thank you, Len, for sharing that information. We're also going to send it in the follow-up email. But I just want to take the time to thank you all for being here with us this evening. And yeah, be on the lookout for a follow-up email with everyone's information, the recipe, and links to the script and numbers for calling the senators, and also like social media for all of our partners tonight. So yeah, I just want to say thanks everyone, and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks for organizing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you, everyone.